Hey everybody, welcome back to the Elvis Good Luck Podcast. It's such a privilege to get to do this with every one of you listeners, and I just want to say a very big thank you for being part of this journey. Today we're diving into a topic that every single one of us struggle with at one point or another. Guess what it is? Patience. Yeah, I can hear you sighing already, because patience isn't exactly a popular subject. It's something we all know we need. But let's be real, it's hard, especially when you are waiting for something big, whether it's an answer to prayer, a new job, a relationship, or even a dream you've been working toward. Waiting can feel like the most difficult thing in the world. So today, we're going to talk about patience in the process. Take it in right now. We're going to explore what it looks like to wait well. You know, there's a difference from waiting and waiting well. So today, we're talking about what it looks like to wait well and trust that even in the waiting, God is working. You know, the Bible has some incredible wisdom to offer on this. So let's jump into it. Are you ready? Our main verse for today will be Ecclesiastes 3 verse 11. He has made everything beautiful in its time. Let's break that down, because it's not just saying that things eventually work out. It's saying that God is making things beautiful in their appointed time. So if you are in a season of waiting right now, know this: God is up to something beautiful, even if you can't see it yet. Let's start with a story from the Bible about someone who had to exercise serious patience. And his name is Joseph. You know the guy with the multicolored coat? His story in the Bible of Genesis is a perfect example of patience in the process. Joseph had big dreams. Literally, he dreamed that he would be in a position of authority and that even his brothers would bow down to him. But instead of things taking off for him right away, he went through years of setback, trials, and disappointment. First, his brothers, jealous of his dreams, sold him into slavery. Then, just when things were starting to look up for him in Egypt, he was forcefully accused and thrown into prison. I mean, can you imagine how frustrated he must have felt? I'm sure he will be like, God, I thought you gave me these dreams. Why is everything going so wrong? But you know what Joseph did? Joseph didn't give up. He kept trusting God. And eventually, after years of waiting, he was raised to the second most powerful position in Egypt. Can you imagine what God can do? Joseph's story teaches us that the process often takes longer than we expect. But you know what? God shapes us in the process, preparing us for what is next. And here is a kicker. When Joseph finally stepped into his God-given role, everything he went through made sense. The hardships weren't wasted. They prepared him for the position of influence God had for him. Maybe you are like Joseph right now, feeling stuck in a pit or in a prison season where it seems like nothing is happening. It's easy to get frustrated or even start doubting if God is still with you. But trust me, God is not in the business of wasting time. He's using this season to shape your character, deepen your faith, and prepare you for what's ahead. Alright, let's get personal for a minute. You know I like to share my personal experience. I've definitely been in seasons where it felt like God had forgotten about me. There was a time in my life when I had all these big dreams and plans, and I thought things would happen fast. I was working hard, praying hard, and expecting immediate result, but things didn't happen in my timing. I remember feeling discouraged, even questioning whether God was really leading me down the right path. It seemed like doors were closing and the waiting felt endless. But looking back now, I realized that those years weren't wasted. God was teaching me things that I couldn't have learned any other way. He was showing me how to trust Him, how to let go of control, and how to develop patience, not just for the outcome, but for the process itself. And when the breakthrough finally came, I was better prepared because of the wait. I wasn't just chasing the dreams anymore. I was chasing God, and that made all the difference. Somebody might ask today, how do we cultivate patience in the process? What does it actually look like to wait well? I'm sure as you're listening to me right now, you might be asking that question. And this is the first thing. Trust God's timing. I'll say that again. Trust God's timing. This is the hardest part, right? Trusting that God knows what He's doing, even when the timeline doesn't match up with ours. You know, in Isaiah 55:8-9, it says, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts." God's perspective is so much bigger than ours. What looks like a delay to us is often divine timing in His eyes. Secondly, be active in your waiting. Waiting doesn't mean doing nothing. Patience in the process means actively seeking God, working on what's in front of you, and preparing for what's to come. Joseph didn't sit around feeling sorry for himself in prison. He walked faithfully in every situation he was in, and God used those moments to elevate him. Number 3, find joy in the journey. Philippians 4:4 says, "Rejoice in the Lord always." I will say it again, rejoice. This doesn't mean we have to be fake or pretend like everything is great when we are frustrated. But it does mean we can find joy in knowing that God is working in the process. We can celebrate the small victories along the way, even before we see the full picture. Number 4, surrender control. I know this one stings because I've been there. Sometimes we try to rush the process because we don't want to wait. We try to force things to happen in our own timing, and that usually leads to frustration or even failure. But when we surrender control to God and trust His timing, we find peace. Proverbs 3:5-6 reminds us to trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways, submit to Him, and He will make your path straight. I know there are challenges to patience, and let's be real for a second. Patience is hard because we live in a world that's all about instant gratification. We are used to getting things now. We can order something online and it shows up at your doorstep the next day. You can send a text and someone responds instantly. We are not used to waiting, and when God asks us to wait, it feels uncomfortable. But here is the thing, God's process is different from the world's process. He's not interested in quick fixes. He's after lasting transformation. The waiting season is often where God does His deepest work in us. So when we are feeling the tension of impatience, that is a clue that God is still refining us, still teaching us to trust Him. Let's take a look at another biblical example. David. David was anointed to be king when he was just a shepherd boy, but he didn't become king right away. In fact, It was years before he took the throne. During that time, he faced some serious challenges, like being hunted by King Saul, living in caves, and wondering when God's promise would come true. But David didn't lose faith. He continued to trust God's process, even when it didn't make sense. And when the time came, he was ready to step into his role as king. What would have happened if David had tried to take the throne prematurely? He wouldn't have been ready. God used that time to shape David's heart, to teach him humility, and to prepare him for leadership. As we conclude today, here is the heart of today's podcast. Patience in the process is all about trusting God's timing. It's about believing that He is at work, even when we can't see the full picture. Ecclesiastes 3:11 tells us that God makes everything beautiful in His time. If you're in a season of waiting, take heart. God hasn't forgotten you. He's preparing something beautiful for you. When the time is right, He will reveal it. Remember Joseph, remember David, and remember this: God is more interested in developing your character than in giving you a quick outcome. Trust Him in the process, because it is the process that He shapes you into the person you are meant to be. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I hope this message encourages you to embrace patience in whatever process you are walking through right now. God's timing is perfect, even when it doesn't feel like it. So keep trusting, keep believing, and know that He is working all things for your good. Until next time, be patient, stay hopeful, and trust the process. Because why? God's got you.